Okay, so let me give you some overview and some heads up on this code along. So this is chapter 3 through 5, and I already have open the the markdown file. And in this case, I'm going to scroll down past what we did for attendance to where it says week 2 code along 3, 4, and 5. Okay, I also have open my VS Code, actually right here. I was actually playing around with something else, so I have open my VS Code. I'll have my HTML document. I will hit go live. At this point, now I have that file up and running. Okay, so we're going to talk now about some things that I want you to do and just make sure you catch as we go through these chapters. And I won't go through all of it in detail because that's what the instructions are for, but I want to show you a couple of things. One thing is, and you're going to see me highlight this idea of a notes file going forward, but for this week, I'm just going to have you create one, and then I want you to take notes. When I say make sure you understand or go along and learn about entities, it is really good to stop and take some notes in there, but I will become more specific as we move forward. I'm just trying to not throw so much at you as you're still leveling up on these code alongs. But let's go ahead and create this. So in your W2 underscore HTML, what you would do is create a file. That file would be called readme.md. Hit enter. This is a markdown file. Now this is different than your HTML documents. And in this case, if I said heading 1, that would just be a pound. And you might wonder, why are we mixing markdown with markup, meaning HTML markup? It's because it's a very commonly used language and or syntax in web, also in software development. It's just a great way to write documents. So in here, when you take, put notes in there, and then you can use as a matter of fact, there's a cheat sheet. I think that's what I will do, is also in the instruction provide you outline here. But I'm just going to show you when you're looking at this here, you can also hit the little, let me close it and show you again. Now that I have the markdown file open, I can do that and it'll show me the way this renders, because when you're looking at my instruction, what you're looking at is a markdown file. So it's good to get to know these things. And like I said, I'm not going to specify, but I want to see some notes from the work that you're going to do this week with this assignment. Okay, Dave talks about some shortcuts. You're going to code along with him, learn about text content, obviously way important. One thing I noticed when Dave did the changing of the H2, and again, you haven't learned about this yet unless you already know, but I found that mine was not working, and I found a link to what's called Stack Overflow, and I have it open. Let me show you basically what was happening. As an example here, if I wanted to make this an H3, before I made the change that was in there, it would only change the first tag and not the second tag. And it's really nice that it would change both for me. So in order to get that to work, and I just did undo there, I went and found the link here that shows how to fix it. And then what will happen here, and Stack Overflow is very, very commonly used, as is ChatGPT, of course. But here's how you can fix it. But here's the other thing that you can find about finding answers is sometimes they'll say in VS Code, and this is an old version, this is how you would fix that functionality if it was not changing for you. And they would say go to File, go to Preferences, go to Settings. Well, in VS Code, if you come down to here, you just go to Settings. And then under Settings here, then you could look at the workspace. Okay, and let me actually just show you specifically, in this case you're searching for, and I could just copy this. You're going to search for this. Okay, oh, I must not have copied it. Let me try that again. Okay, copy. Cool. And so what happens is this is a setting inside of VS Code, and mine, the first time I did this code along, was not clicked. And as soon as I clicked it, that functionality then worked great. Okay. So again, this is where I'm adding some additional content into Dave's course to help you make sure you have all those pieces working. So Dave continues on. This is where understanding the hierarchy of the headings, creating horizontal rules. This would be a great place to add to your notes. Okay, so then continue on. I don't see anything here I'd want to talk about specifically. Definitely learn about block versus inline. That's a fundamental concept, and then you'll have a commit message. Then you'll learn about how entities and then how they're not accessible, but then they actually are. Code along and add comments, and then you'll do entities, validate. And this is where I showed you in attendance the idea of validating your HTML. Okay, so here, in this case, I'm not going to cover it because this is all just good stuff and good productivity, this stuff with keyboard shortcuts. It's one of those things, the more you learn and the more you use them, the more productive you can become. And you'll learn about ODs, ULs, and DLs. These are wonderful used all over the place. Now, in this case, I already covered this topic in using the validation extension. You can totally do it the way Dave says, but remember the way I will look at your code is I will pull it into my, actually I don't know if I talked about this, I pull your code into my local system and I validate it locally and I look at your code there. Now this is something I talked about in attendance, but I specifically have it here because I want to show you an example of why you use these formatters. So as an example here, and this is Prettier will for single tags, elements that don't have a closing tag, actually will try to sometimes inject them, and the validator will throw an error. So that's why I don't use those anymore. And I know it's something that can be fixed, but it takes quite a bit of, not quite a bit, it takes a few things to set up. But what I did here is I created an example of why you use Prettier or some kind of formatter. And notice how my H2 is out of line. I purposely did that. So if I wanted to actually align my code, and this is something you'll notice I will definitely talk about if you're not doing it in your code, which is formatting your code. So I could highlight this code. I could actually highlight Control A the whole page, but specifically I could highlight this section if I wanted to. I could right click, I could come down and format selection, and then what it will do is it'll just use my built-in what's in VS Code already. And I don't need to install anything, and notice what it did is it aligned that for me. Okay, so that, as long as you're using some kind of formatter, Prettier is fine, except that issues with validation come up. That's why we don't use it. Now, after you finish chapter 4, I offer a break. And I want to describe this break because it's something you will see generally in my coursework, is I say, hey, if you got to this point, and you do have to have, in order to get this break, you have to have done all the work up until this last commit. These are just informational things, but you have to have done this last commit, and you do have to submit your code, your URL for your commit history. And we've already talked about how to do that. And so in the assignment itself, now I'm not viewing it as a student, but you would do an attempt and you would go ahead and submit your URL. Now what I do is I go look at your code so far and I give you feedback on that, right? So that's one of the benefits, is you get feedback and you get a break. So here's what you do. If you want to take a break and then finish chapter 5, by the next due date, which is generally Thursday, this is what you do, is you submit your commit history to show me you've completed up to this point, and that you'll complete the last chapter by Thursday's due date. Now Thursday is generally when our review's brought up, so having it done by the time I wake up Friday morning is really what you want to do. Now this is optional. If you feel like you're able to keep focused, then continue on. Now, if for some reason you miss Monday's due date, which is where this follows, and you're trying to use this break to get caught up, you can complete the entire code along by the Thursday due date, and I will only take off 10%. Okay, not the normal 25, but you have to have had it done by that Friday morning. Again, I don't recommend this because the amount of focus and time these code alongs take. If you submit it after the due date, it is reduced. Now, I do talk about late passes in the attendance. Okay, I just want you to know how this works. So then, and by the way, you could, let's say you completed that part by Monday night, submitted your URL, I maybe gave you some feedback, and you went and fixed something, and you had a new commit saying you fixed based on feedback, totally great. Now you come back and you do the rest. And I want to talk about some of the things you might run into in this chapter because Dave's setup is a little different than ours. He's going to create a new page, and this is good to see how well you're retaining the content first. Can you create this HTML page on your own? And then talks about word wrap. It's good to do those things and to have them set up. And then Dave talks about links. Links are vitally important, just a fundamental way the web works. Now, I give a heads up here. Dave, because of his folder layout, when he shows these links, he does, in this case, this is a link tag that specifically references the /. And because of the way our folders are set up for this course, this is not going to work as you would expect it to, and I'm about to show you why. But I also tell you, just remove the /. Now we could talk about what this does. It basically references the root. I'm about to show you this. But in this case, websites typically do have folders, and this is why understanding how web pages files are then created and rendered into web pages and how they reference other pages is really important. But for our purposes, just know that typically if you wanted to reference something, you wouldn't use a /. You would use whatever you're referencing, whether that be an external reference or an internal reference of page you've created. And so this is just my example. So let's actually show you. I'm going to pull over my editor, and I have up here, I just coded a quick aref. I gave it some link text. So in this case, I'm going to simulate that idea of what you're going to see Dave do. And now I am running live server, and I do have this. And if I go over to my page being rendered, now by the way, because of the way he did the HTML, and once you click on a link in the basic CSS setup, this actually is a color that is by default. But this is my link text, and by the way, if you look down at the bottom when you roll your mouse over any link, and by the way, you should really actually look at these things and understand them when you're just generally browsing, but specifically here, what is it going to do, right? Now we could talk about what the / does, which is going to go to the root. And this is what this is about to do. And there are definitely other kinds of links that you're learning about in the course. But when I do that, then it actually takes me, and again, if you're on CodeSpace, this actually would behave maybe similarly. Actually, no, I don't. Yeah, actually, it might do it. It may behave similarly. But in this case, what you actually are going to do in that part is actually create a page. And so by doing, let's say, and the page you're going to create is an about.html, okay? And when Dave does something like about.html here, I do know how to spell. Okay. Now this is where you learn about live reloading, and I'm going to go ahead and click back into here. And now, by the way, notice that that color changed because that's a link I have not clicked on. But also notice where that link is going based on the /. And you can actually see it again down in your own. You will see this. When I click on this, it doesn't bring up because it's looking in the root. But in our directory setup, we're actually in a subdirectory, and when you reference the /, it's looking for the root. So you don't do that. All you have to do is take off the /. Okay. If I come back here, I'm going to go back. Now when I do it, it actually, it must not have reloaded. Let me go back. Hit refresh here. Oh, do I? I have that page in there. Oh, I do. And that's the About page. Okay. So just know for our course and our folder setup, and generally we could talk about on the web in general, that there are times when using the forward slash is fine, and by itself, when you use a forward slash, it's going to go to the root, and it will immediately, if you don't specify a file, look for the index file, okay, if you don't specify it. But I just want you to understand that why, and by the way, this is for the local setup. For those of you on CodeSpace, you don't have this, so don't let it confuse you. But I just wanted to explain that in a little more detail. Okay, so once you get all the way through this, and this is really great content in my opinion, that's why I chose this course of Dave's. Thank you, Dave. Once you finish this first code long, then you push your code, because you could have been doing the get add and the get commit with the messages I provide. So get add star, get commit, right? -m, open quote, here's your commit message, right? But what you will do is provide me your H2 commit history, your W2 underscore HTML to complete it. And then I actually go through and show you how I grade this work, right? Is it free of validation issues? Did all the commits have the code? Did you have all the commits? Did you give me the correct URL? And again, if you submit late, you can get late graded. There are passes available. You can always ask about those as well. Okay, so hopefully this provides you that heads up. And again, I generally recommend, and I should probably end with this, is before you start into going, I would review the content so that way you can remember as you're watching, oh yeah, Rio said something about this, so you just have that in your head. Or the other thing you could do, and I probably should have talked about this in attendance, but there was so much I wanted to say. One thing you could do is just have these things side by side like this and go back and forth. And then maybe what I would do here is actually in my other my live server here, I actually would bring this. Let me just park this right here, bring this tab into here, and I might move back and forth between these things just to kind of have everything on one screen. Okay, hope this helps. Talk to you later.